the Sportsocracy, a show I'm affiliated with and I work with fairly closely. I am partners with Jeremy Green of the Sportsocracy on a website called NFLDraft.net. They were talking about fixing the NFL schedule, and it got my brain clicking, and that's going to bring you what today we are doing. We're going to fix this NFL schedule. Now, what's going on? Welcome back to Draft Yoda. I am Draft Yoda himself, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd, and we're stepping away from the player evaluations for a second because I want to fix this issue in the NFL. It's the schedule, not primetime schedule, not whether your team has too many Thursday night games, not whether the Cowboys are on national television every 5 minutes. I'm talking about competitive balance because every year we hear the same thing. This team has an easy schedule. This team got destroyed by the schedule makers. This division is a joke. That team only made the playoffs because of who they played. And the more you look at it, the more obvious it becomes. The NFL schedule is not fair as it could be, Now, no schedule is ever going to be perfectly equal. Football is too unpredictable. Teams change too much year to year. Injuries happen, a quarterback gets hurt, coaches get fired, rookies break out. Teams we thought were going to be terrible win 11 games. Teams we thought were going to be contenders fall apart before Halloween. So I'm not pretending that we can create a perfect schedule, but I do think we can create a better one. And I'm going to start off where this is all eventually going to go. We're going to go to an 18-game schedule, 9 home games, 9 road games. We'll stop with the 17 schedule stuff, and we'll just go ahead and make the move. Now, more fairness, more balance, more structure. Let's get into it. Problem with the current NFL schedule, it's not random. There's a formula. The problem is the formula still creates huge differences in schedule difficulty. And that matters because, football, you have such a small sample size. In hockey, you have 82 games. In basketball, you have 82 games. In baseball, you have 162 games. In the NFL, 1 or 2 games change everything because of how few games we have. One win can be the difference between winning a division and missing the playoffs entirely. One loss can be the difference between hosting a playoff game and going on the road. And that comes down to how the schedule makers liked you that year. We have people whose jobs are on the line, and it comes down to how well the schedule makers liked you. The NFL tries to balance things. Division winners play division winners. Second place teams play other second place teams. And that part makes sense. I just don't think they expand it far enough. But the problem is it's the only they only do a small portion of the schedule this way. A huge chunk of the schedule still is tied to rotating divisions. And it creates massive swings. Because in the NFL, who you play is not just background noise. It can define your season. And when playoff spots, draft position, coaching jobs, quarterback development are all being judged off of wins and losses, the schedule should do a better job matching teams with comparable opponents. That's the goal in this, is a better competitive balance so we have a better product to put on television week in and week out. First fix, we moved it to 18 games. Nobody's going to fight me on this one. It's where we're going. If it's not this year, it's in the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to 18 games. It gives me 9 home games, 9 road games. No more uneven home advantage. It's just simple. 9 at home, 9 away. Okay. Every team will play 7 games against the teams that finished in the same place as they did the previous year. Okay. So if you finish 4th, you're going to play all the other 4th place teams. You're going to play your division opponents 3 times. Okay, once for each team. You're going to have 3 division games. Okay, then you have 3 games against rotating NFC divisions, and you have 3 games against rotating AFC divisions. Then you have 1 random NFC team that didn't fall into any of those categories above, and 1 random AFC team that didn't fall into any of those categories above. Right? So it becomes a filter for teams you're going to play. And it gives you 18 total games. And the schedule becomes more tied to where you actually finished. If you were a first place team, you're going to face first place teams. If you are a last place team, you're going to play last place teams. If you're an average team, if you were average, your schedule is going to reflect that. And that's how competitive balance should work. The biggest change is the divisional games. I know the first thing some fans are going to say, wait a minute, only 3 divisional games. Yes. This model, you play each divisional opponent once, not twice. And I know that is going to bother some people because divisional rivalries matter. Jets-Bills matters, Cowboys-Eagles matters. But does it matter more than 1 game? These games are part of the identity of the league, and I get that. But here's my argument. If the goal is to create the fairest playoff race possible, playing 6 divisional games creates too much imbalance because not all divisions are built the same. You cannot tell me that a fan of, let's just pick an NFC East team because they have the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Commanders. You can't tell me a fan of that division doesn't wish their team was in, let's say, the NFC South, who has been a weaker conference or a weaker division in the conference for a minute now. Don't you think that would be easier for you? I think it would be easier for you. Some divisions are loaded, some divisions are weak, and almost 1/3 of your season comes from your own division. Your schedule difficulty can be heavily controlled by something that you have no choice over. If your division is a monster, you're already starting out fighting uphill. If your division is terrible, you got a head start. Look back at the Patriots when they had their run. You chalked up 5 wins a season because they were playing the Jets twice. They were playing the Dolphins twice, and they played the Bills twice. You knew they were going to go 5-1 in that conference every year. There was always one slip up, but it was going to be 5-1 every year in that division. That isn't fair. My model, you still play your divisional opponent. You still keep those rivalries alive. The trade-off is more balance for less repetition. Why I chose the same place games is the most important part to the system. I believe those 7 games are the most important part to the system. If you finish first in the division, I think you should play the first place people in every division in the league. Second, third for third, fourth for fourth. And that happens across the entire league. That matters because it makes the schedule more honest. Good teams get tested. Bad teams get a path to see what they've got in the draft and potentially reset or gain momentum through this process. Middle teams would be forced to prove whether they were actually rising or just benefiting from a soft draw. That makes the schedule more connected to performance, and I think it's the right approach. The NFL already uses some versions of this idea. I would just make it a bigger part of the formula, because if you want true competitive balance, last year's finish should matter more. how the rotating divisions would work, you know, because you still need some variety. I still want you to see all these teams come to your door. You know, the formula keeps rotating divisions so that each team plays 3 games against the rotating divisions. Why 3, not 4? Because you're already playing the same placed finisher in those division. So instead of duplicating that matchup and getting you twice against that one player, we went ahead and cut that out. Keeps the structure clean. It also keeps national variety. You get more AFC versus NFC. You still get teams traveling to different markets. You still get rotating opponents. The schedule does not become completely dominated by random divisional draw. It's a balance. Performance-based games first, then rotation games second, and random games last. The 2 random games are there to complete the schedule A, but also to allow for you to see your team play people that you want to see, essentially. It's the only rule they currently they cannot they don't already have on the schedule. You know, it's important because it gives the league flexibility. The NFL loves inventory. They love to create matchups. They love TV windows. They love storylines. You know, so I'm not trying to remove all flexibility from the league office. This gives some randomness, some fresh matchups. Also allows the people building the schedule, if, let's say, Lamar Jackson left Baltimore and went to the 49ers, just throwing a name out there, it would allow them to set up a Baltimore 49er matchup for the next season, no matter if they didn't fall into one of these categories already. Now I have the ability to go, hey, we need to put these 2 together because of this. And then kind of filter out those storylines so that when there's randomness left, I can just piece them together. I used our good friend Jeremy Green's Jets as the example for this. You know, they play in the AFC East, so off rip, they got the Patriots, the Bills, and the Dolphins. That's 3 games, right? Now, they finished last in their division, so they would get the Browns, the Titans, the Raiders, the Giants, the Lions, the Saints, and the Cardinals. All 7 teams finished in their division. I chose the South divisions for their NFC divisions, so they also got to play the Panthers, the Buccaneers, and the Falcons. They also get to play the Jaguars, the Texans, and the Colts. Okay? And then their random opponents are the Commanders and the Bengals. It's an 18-game schedule. You know, you choose which ones you want at home. You know, you get 9 at home, 9 away. But what that allows is, I just listed out 17 teams, and 15 of them may or may not be teams you played last year, which allows you as an audience to see your team play other teams. It allows the NFL to put matchups together that you don't already see often. For a Panthers fan, we see Seattle so much that it almost becomes second nature. This expands on that. You know, I'm not always seeing Seattle. I'm now seeing every other team in the nation. It creates rotation, and it creates the schedule around what you did the year before. So if you finish last, you get a last place schedule. You still play your division. You still play the rotating divisions. You still get your cross-conference variety. You still get your random matchups. To me, it's cleaner, it's more balanced, and it's easier to explain to the average Joe of how we pick these games and how we do this every year. It does a better job of giving teams schedules that match the prior year performance and allows us to see, is my team making strides forward or are we standing still? It gives NFL front offices the ability to say, hey, last year you finished last in this division, so we're going to have an easier schedule this year. I need to see X amount of wins from this team, or else we need to go in a different direction. That's clarity, guys. And I think this helps bad teams, good teams. I think this helps everybody. And it's one of the reasons I like this system. It helps the bad teams without giving them anything for free. Bad teams already get better draft picks. It's part of the NFL competitive balance system, but the schedule should also give rebuilding teams a more realistic path to improvement. If a team finished last, why are they forcing them into a schedule that could randomly be putting them into one of the most brutal schedules possible? It doesn't help development. It doesn't help young quarterback. It doesn't help your young quarterbacks. It doesn't help your young coaches or new coaches. It doesn't help bad teams become more competitive. In my system, the last place teams play the last place teams. That doesn't guarantee wins because you still got to play it on the field. You still earn it. But it creates more reasonable matchups. And honestly, it's better television when it's a competitive game. I know going into the game, if it's the Patriots and the Raiders, I know going into the game this season, I don't have to watch that game because the Patriots are going to smoke the Raiders. But if it's the Jets and the Raiders, they're on the same level. They've got the same general talent level. And it could decide whether or not one of these teams gets the first pick in the draft next year. There's a built-in storyline around it doing this. It creates more reasonable matchups, better television. Nobody wants to watch rebuilding teams get buried every week by a schedule that has no chance for them. Give them games against teams with similar situations. Now you learn something. Is the team actually improving? Which young quarterback is making progress? Which coach has a locker room moving in the right direction? It's better football. I know somebody's going to tell me, oh, you're just punishing better teams. My answer is good. If you won your division, you should play a tougher road. If you're the number one seed, you should not get the same schedule as a team picking in the top 5. This is professional sports. You reward for being great in playoff positioning, banners, divisional titles, and Super Bowl runs. The next year you get tested. It's how you create meaningful competition. If your team is truly elite, if your team is truly one of the best teams in the country, if your team is one of the most dominant teams in the sport, you should be able to play any team any week. And if they can't, maybe they were not dominant as we thought. It's not unfair, it's honest. Best teams should play the best teams more often. Creates better games, creates better television, creates better playoff races, and it gives fans more premium matchups during the regular season. And it helps the playoff race. I truly believe the playoff race would get better under this system because teams competing for similar spots would have more comparable schedules. Right now, you could have 2 wildcard teams fighting for the same spot with wildly, completely different schedules. Let's hypothetical, let's say that the Panthers and the Eagles are fighting for the last spot in the NFC. Eagles played the Cowboys. They played the Commanders. They've played, let's say they played the Steelers, the Browns, or not the Browns, the Bengals, the Ravens, The Chiefs, they've played difficult games and they've shown that they can compete in these difficult games. And you've got the Panthers who played Atlanta, the Saints, they played Tampa, let's say they played Miami, New York Jets. Who sounds like it's a harder schedule? Clearly, the Eagles have fought harder and faced war-worthy opponents. They should be in the playoff. A 10-7 record against a brutal schedule is not the same as a 10-7 record against a weak schedule. This format would not eliminate that issue completely, but it would reduce it because more games would be tied to where teams finished the previous year, and that makes the final standings more meaningful. It gives the playoff race a clearer foundation, and it cleans up a loose end that is currently hanging out there, which is a major advantage in the home-away split. Right now, in the 17-game schedule, some teams are getting 9 home games, and some teams are only getting 8. Yes, the league rotates the advantage, but I would rather just remove that imbalance completely. If the season is going to expand anyways, let's just make the math work. 18 games, 9 home, 9 away. It's simple, it's balanced, it's clean. It's what the NFL should do. There should be no odd number of games. Just give me an extra bye week. Let's add an extra week of games. And let's be smart about this. Really. You are the most predominant sport in the country. Now, I know there's going to be an obvious question. Player safety. And hey, we're adding an extra game. That should be a first concern. Football is violent. The season is already long. Players are already dealing with injuries. And adding another game cannot be treated like it's nothing. So if the NFL adds 18 games, they should support 2 bye weeks. They should support, game day rosters that are expanded. I'm not saying it's crazy, but instead of 53, let's say 60. That gives you 7 extra players every week. They should support giving teams more flexibility with injured reserve returns and, making sure player compensation reflects the extra game. Because you cannot ask players to play more football without giving them more support. Yes, I like the 18-game model, but only if it comes with a common sense player protections and player support. I know one of the bigger pushbacks I'm going to get from this is the division rivalries. People love the home and home format. They love playing division rivals twice. They love the revenge game. They love the late season rematch. I understand that. But let me ask you, when's the last time you cared about the Bills and the Jets' second game? When was the last time you really cared about Seattle playing Arizona late in the season? You don't. You still play your rivals. You see them every year. Those games matter. And honestly, when it's a one-off, I think it matters more. The entire season is not controlled by whether your division happened to be loaded or weak. And it's a trade I'm willing to make. The funny part, I think the NFL would actually like parts of this because the system creates more good games, more first place teams playing first place teams, more bad teams playing bad teams in games that can actually win, and gives fans a reason to go to the game because there's a chance we can win every week. Gives them more inventory, more flexibility with the schedule. It's not perfect, but to me, it's better. So here's my final pitch. The NFL schedule should be 18 games, 9 home, 9 away. Each team should play 3 divisional games, 7 same place finishers, 3 teams in a rotation of the NFC division, 3 teams in rotating AFC divisions, 1 random NFC, 1 random AFC. That is the formula. It keeps rivalries, it keeps rotation, it keeps variety. it keeps prior year performance and it makes it a bigger part of the schedule. And I believe that's the key. If you finish first, you should be tested like a first place team. If you finish last, you should get realistic rebuilding route. If you play in the middle, you're going to have it tough some weeks and easier the next weeks. That's just how you make the schedule better. It's not perfect. It'll never be perfect, but I think it can be better. And for a league where one game can define an entire season, better matters. But that's my idea. What do you think? Do you support the 18-game NFL schedule? If every team had 9 home games and 9 road games, would you be willing to give up the home and home with your division for a rotating schedule so you see your division rival every other year? Do you think this helps fix the NFL scheduling issue? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy these football conversations, we're always here. Draft Yoda. Trying to fix a game that I love and we all love. Make sure you hit like, subscribe. We're going to keep putting in work. We are doing NFL draft preseason projections for, the top 100 plus prospects you should know going into college football. So check that out. Also check out the Sportsocracy with Jeremy Green and Tank Spencer. Wonderful, wonderful guys. Great North Sports with Dubs and David. Amazing guys covering this game as well. Especially if you've got a fantasy side, give them a shout. Let them know Draft Yoda sent you, because I am Draft Yoda, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd, and we'll see you next.